This is Theo, and this is a story of how a mare chose him over two other stallions, not because he was the strongest, but because he simply was her best match. Now, before I tell you how Oakley chose him and how a young bachelor suddenly became a herd stallion with his own herd, we need to briefly explore the world these horses actually live in. So, in the wild, of course, no horse lives alone. They live in smaller family groups called a band or a herd, and these horses stay close together day and night. A band is like a small family, usually with one mature stallion, one or more mares, and their offspring. In some bands, there are also two or more adult stallions and more members. And around these bands live other bands or herds, and also a few bachelor stallions without families of their own. And just for clarification, I use the word band for the small family group, and sometimes I also say herd because these terms are used differently around the world. And all of these bands together form what I call a herd association. Why don't I simply call it a herd as many do? Because the term herd association makes it much clearer that several independent herds or bands make up a larger unit. It's not as tightly structured as a family band, but the horses still belong to the same wider group. And these bands within the larger herd association don't always stay close together. Sometimes they don't see each other for hours or even days, but most of the time they actually stay fairly close. And even when they don't, each band usually knows exactly where the other bands are. And these horses know each other very well. Many of them encounter each other every day, but each band still has its own boundaries, its own relationships, and its own rhythm. And this is the herd association Theo was actually born into, specifically into Reese's band. Reese is a composed, reliable stallion, and he wasn't just Theo's father, he was also Theo's first role model for how a stallion carries responsibility, which is not through dominance or control, but through stability, harmony, and providing safety, and through the ability to keep conflicts from arising in the first place. So, Theo grew up with the skills and the calm confidence his father taught him. You can still see it in him today, and that might actually be the reason why Theo now has his own herd. Okay, so Theo was lucky enough to stay in his birth herd for a long time. But when he was about 3.5 years old, he was, more or less clearly, asked by his father to leave. And like many young stallions who experienced this, Theo was at first kind of lost and unsure what he should do or where he should go. But fortunately, there were a few other older bachelor stallions who had just lost their own herds who took him in right away and taught him a lot. And there were also a few younger ones, and Theo became especially close with them and mostly traveled with them. One was Peregrine, the black roan stallion you can see here playing with two other bachelors, and another young unnamed black stallion. Peregrine and Theo are really a good example of how different characters can be and how well these horses can still get along, or maybe even because of that. Theo is somewhat calmer, more serious, and more reserved, more observer than risk taker. Peregrine, on the other hand, is more outgoing and curious, always right in the middle when there's something to experience, but also very caring and extremely good-natured. So Theo was living his best bachelor life when the pregnant mare Oakley joined the three young bachelors. Oakley originally lived in a different band in a different herd association. That's also where she got pregnant. She was still very young, only 1.5 years old, when she left her natal band and joined her new herd. And she also became pregnant there in her very first year. But sadly, this stallion died the following year while Oakley was heavily pregnant, and all his mares then joined other stallions. But Oakley, she joined our three young bachelors. And what did they do? Instead of fighting each other, they tried to impress her by being attentive and caring, and by protecting her from other bachelor stallions. And then, after some time, and maybe some thorough assessment, Oakley chose Theo. But why him? Well, mares don't choose the physically strongest, flashiest, or most dominant stallion, nor the one who always wins every fight. They choose the one who feels safest, the one who fits best character-wise, the one who makes the world safe, the one who gives space but is always there when you need him, and the one who will be the best father for their foals. And this is how Theo became a herd stallion, caring for Oakley and their new foal. And the other two, Peregrine and the other black bachelor, simply accepted Oakley's decision and moved on. But then, unfortunately, this foal from the other stallion was very weak from the beginning and didn't survive long. And at that time, you could clearly see how deeply Oakley grieved for quite a while. And through all of that, Theo stayed close to her and made sure she felt safe. And if this was not already enough, during that time there were also several other bachelor stallions who showed very strong interest in Oakley. And even though Theo is calm by nature and usually keeps a small herd on the quieter edges of the herd association, sometimes, like here in this video, even completely out of sight of the other herds, he defended her with everything he had, because in those moments he simply doesn't compromise. Today, this young herd is content and found its place, and they are very special. They have their own rhythm, they know their ways, and Theo and Oakley have their own foal now, Monroe, and also there's Asha, another young mare who joined them later. And Theo carries his role and responsibilities with this quiet composure that you can't explain. You can just observe it. And when you see this wonderful herd and also how seriously Theo takes his role as herd stallion, your heart truly opens up, and you just hope that humans won't ever try to separate this wonderful, small, slowly growing herd, like ever. So now, why does the story matter for us? Because it teaches us that mares can be stolen permanently. They choose which stallion they want to be with, and they choose calm, safety, and clarity. And yes, our horses still make choices the same way about who to follow, not through fear or dominance, but through real trust, safety, and emotional compatibility. That's the real foundation of every herd and every partnership. So maybe this is also something we can feel and experience with our own horses. That relationship or trust doesn't come from control or dominance, but from the feeling that someone is there who keeps the world safe and reliable. If you'd like to see more of these wild horses, their families, their ways, their decisions, then I would be very happy if you would subscribe to my channel and maybe also recommend it to others, as from now on, I'll be posting new stories every week from a world that can teach us so much, not just about our horses, but also about ourselves and all our other relationships, often more than we expect. Thank you so much and see you next week.